It's time to strap in and get ready for the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Dan and Dirk are live in the studio today, ready to hear from you at 402-573-0590.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting at Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Make sure you set time out of your Sunday. It's going to be an absolutely gorgeous day today. And I think today ends the semi-cool weather we've had for a while.
Yep, that's what they're saying. It's going to get warm.
Hell has doth returned.
We're getting real close to the silver dollars. It's got to heat up.
That's true. It is going to get blistering hot, and that's exciting. We are, 11 days away from the start of the Silver Dollar Nationals. The Thursday night race is now paying $5,300 to win for the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series. The Thursday night Nebraska 360 Sprint Cars paying $2,000 to win, and then also USMTS and Lucas Oil Late Model Practice on Thursday night. Friday night is the qualifiers for all of Saturday night. There'll also be unsanctioned B modifieds at the track on Friday night, and then on Saturday night it's the big daddy of them all, the $10,000 to win for USMTS modifieds. Oh, can't forget the last chance qualifiers. There's also going to be a dash that's going to be for the USMTS modifieds. I believe that's paying $1,000 to win. And then there will be the USMTS modified feature event paying $10,000 to win, and the Lucas Oil Late Models paying a measly $53,000.
Measly is the correct word.
And a total purse, this is what kills me, a total purse payout of $263,000. That's a lot of silver dollars.
How much do we get?
We got sponsorship dollars for the Young Guns. By the way, this week's Young Gun is Jonathan Kinzer. You'll hear him coming up in the next break. A stock car driver out of Adams County Speedway, got a long history in dirt racing, and he's just getting his name started out there, so we wanted to put the spotlight on him for a little bit. We'll be doing that all year long, all the way through April of next year is when it's scheduled to end right now. We want to say a big thank you to Sarah Kelly and Sewell Personal Injury Lawyers, more aptly to Craig Kelly for sponsoring that. That came right out of Craig, and IKS Personal Injury Lawyers. And then also thanks to Joe Kaziski and all the Kaziskis and everybody involved at I-80 Speedway for helping us out. The two, IKS and I-80 Speedway, are coming together to co-sponsor that, so we bounce back and forth between those two. And we just settled this week what all of the featured drivers are going to get, so those will be going out in the mail probably next week. So there's going to be a little bit of a prize pack for being picked as a young gun. So thank you to that. I appreciate everybody that has contributed to that. Trevor over at Adams County Speedway, Anthony at I-80 Speedway and with Malvern Bank and at Junction Motor Speedway, Stan and Tom over at Eagle Raceway, everybody that helped us out to kind of build that list. We've got a good list going, but we need more. So if you have any drivers that are younger or new to the dirt racing sport, that's pretty much the only two criteria that we ask for. Frankly, it could be a 30-year-old sport compact driver that's sitting down in a dirt car for the first time. That's a young gun to me. That's a young, it doesn't necessarily be young in age, although 30, I'm slightly over 30, so I'm still young at heart, right? My body's not very young anymore, does it feel like? But if you've got anybody you want to recommend, frontstretchradio@gmail.com. It doesn't cost anything. There's no paying to be a part of it, no spot, nothing. It just, we're putting the spotlight on new drivers or young drivers.
Yep. Yeah, I'm still trying to think of the part where you said you're young at heart, because I wasn't sure that you had a heart sometimes, so.
It beats silently at times.
The brutal life of an announcer.
We got a big show lined up for you today. Turn number 1, we'll talk about the results at Kentucky. Turn number 2, we will sit down with Ben Rhodes, Camp and Roll Truck Series driver. We talked to him just after the Iowa Speedway race a few weeks ago. And oddly enough, Ben brought up something that, once again, I think NASCAR listens to our interviews. Or maybe it's just a common theme throughout the garage that we hit on and then it happens to make a change. But Steve O'Donnell came out and said there's some changes coming to NASCAR for the Gen 7 car in the Cup car, which typically trickles down to the other series over the next couple of years. And one of those things is something that Ben focused on and Ben had talked about in that race. And I guess, to our discredit, how many times have we heard drivers say what Steve O'Donnell said earlier this week about the splitter and the changes that are coming to the next generation car? But we're going to talk to Ben in turn number 2. Turn 3, Stan Cisar will join us and will help me remember what happened on Friday night, because, man, was there a lot of racing action at I-80 Speedway, and I don't remember it all, which is to my detriment. As I should remember it all, because I sat there and watched it and called it and reviewed it, and now I don't remember most of it. But Stan's going to help me out with that. Plus, we'll talk about some of the finer points that happened at Eagle Raceway. And Stan's got some big news coming from one of his drivers that put it in victory lane, but we'll make you sit on suspense, and we'll let Stan spill that information coming up in turn number 3. In turn 4, I think we're going to take some of your phone calls and some of your opinions. We're going to talk about the points, the NASCAR Cup Series points, playoff points, the regular season champion, how it's all landed out. Because I think we got, Dirk, 8 races left, 7 races left?
I was going to say 8, I think.
Because 26 races, we've completed 18 of them, so I think we've got 7 races left. 8 races left. I did the math again in my head. So that'll be coming up in turn number 4. It's
the human calculator.
Who? Not me. All right, results from Kentucky. Dirk, at the beginning of this race, looked like it was going to be a calm race, and then stage 2 happened, and then I thought, are we at Daytona again? Because we had a couple of cautions right back to back where the track was just slick, and that's what we've seen a lot with the repaves. There's the asphalt, the new surface is just so smooth because it hasn't had time to wear yet that the tread can't grip to it as well as it will in a year, 2 years, 3 years when there's gaps between all the asphalt and there's a little bit more to grip onto.
Well, it's just also one of the races that starts with sunlight and, goes into the evening, into the night. So the track does a big change, and that seems to be Cole Pern's strong suit, is setting up for those type of races. I don't know what the magic is, but he seems to get it right. But Brad Keselowski admitted to he goes, I couldn't save it, but he said he got sucked around by the car on the outside. Mm-hmm. Seen it a million times. Yep.
And at Kentucky with the aero dependency that these cars have, it seems to be at Kentucky it's worse than ever. And I think I heard a couple of guys say, because there's just so little grip on that outside groove, that when you get sucked around, there's nothing you can do. But I believe he got sucked around on the inside, right? He was the inside car.
Yeah, but there was a big controversy, I guess the best word, even though a lot of people probably didn't see anything about it. But Brendan Gaughan had made a statement because they were talking about the fact that for the last 10 days or whatever, they'd been running the tire machine on the bottom groove. And Brendan was in a press conference, and he says, and that just totally makes no sense.
Yeah.
You've got a one-groove track. Why do you want to make it more of a one-groove track?
Mm-hmm.
He said, go up and start at the top of the track and drag the tires all the way down, get the whole surface with those tires.
Yeah.
Well, then all the rain they had between Thursday and Friday really wouldn't have done anything, But evidently after the rain, they went out, Kentucky Speedway went out and drug the second groove. And they said, we listened to the drivers. Well, obviously you didn't listen to the drivers because all the people were agreeing with Brendan.
Yeah.
And then
when they do stuff like that, I oftentimes think that we sit in Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, you've had far more experience at these tracks than I have, so I try not to offer too much of an opinion. And I give the benefit of the doubt that these tracks know what they're doing. But something like that, when all of the I didn't hear any driver come out and say, oh, no, just drag the bottom groove. That's good. That's a smart thing to do. After Brendan came out and said that, everybody kind of said, dude's got a point. Well, I don't know what you guys are doing. And the track came out and said, don't worry, we know what we're doing. But then they went and drug the other
Did
groove.
the wrong thing. I mean, when they drug for 10 days on the bottom groove, everybody's going to run there and practice to start off with and then work up. So it's going to have plenty of rubber, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And last night, it made it so it was very difficult to pass.
Yeah. And
very difficult.
Especially when it got strung out like that. It was really interesting to watch, which this is the other end of the spectrum. When you have a track that's tough to pass at, what you get out of that is some amazing restarts. But we didn't get to have very many restarts last night. Martin Truex Jr. and I don't think there was a caution during stage 1, other than the competition caution. I think it went clean through.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything except the competition. What was that, lap 25 or 30?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
And then we had the caution, which involved Jimmy Johnson, Brad Keselowski, and I believe Clint Boyer was involved in that, although he didn't get any damage, unless Boyer was involved in the second accident, which involved Casey Kane and Trevor Bayne. But I remember seeing the 14 slide around, but I don't think he made contact with anybody or anything, and so he didn't get any damage, but he was listed as involved in that wreck.
Yeah, I don't think he made contact with anybody, but yeah, that wreck started right at the beginning of the second segment, and as we made a quick mention earlier, Brad Keselowski said, I got pulled around and I couldn't save it. I don't want to be out this point at the race, and I didn't want to take anybody out at this point of the race,
Love him or hate him, I love listening to that guy. I mean, he irritates me at times because he's a bit of a, I don't really want to say anything really negative because what he says that irritates me is usually beneficial. So I just got to shut myself up and say, you know what, you got to take it. But that's kind of my point with him. He's so eloquent when he's talking about things, and he's very well thought out. And quite frankly, he's young compared to some of these other guys, but I give him the same respect that when Tony Stewart speaks, it's very well thought out, and 9 times out of 10, he's right. And that's the kind of the tough thing with Brad. He's easy to hate, but when he says something, I mean, look at the things he said, and then a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, NASCAR has a new rule in the rule book because he's right. He was talking about the Transformer cars about a year and a half ago and earlier at the end of last season, and all of a sudden we've got Transformer car rules. This big thing that NASCAR is trying to mandate is that drivers can't reset their cars at the end of the race to pass post-race qualifying. And he's talked about how the Hendrick cars, how their cars used to be so skewed. NASCAR came out and made a rule about that, and Hendrick really hasn't made much progress since then. But he talked about how the tough thing for him was that if he would have lifted in that situation, he'd have lost all of his momentum and he'd have fallen back probably about 10 spots.
Well, if they wouldn't have run him over from behind.
Right. And we saw that with a couple of guys on restarts. I think I'm the one of them remembering is the 21 of
Blaney.
Of Blaney. He lifted one time coming out of 4 because his car got squirrely. And I mean, Dirk, it was like he was down. He was running a 4-cylinder car. I mean, they were blowing by him when he was at speed coming out of turn 4, but he burped the throttle to catch the car, and they just went flying by him. And that's to Brad's point. At a track like that with the speeds and you got to keep your momentum up, you can't lift. But his result was that he finished 39th and only picked up 1 point on the day.
Yep. I mean, only one car behind him, and that was Jimmy Johnson, who coincidentally got 3 points for the day. Got more than the car in front of him.
Yeah, that happens a lot this year with the stage racing, just simply because Jimmy finished
Would have been like ninth in the first stage.
Yeah, 9th in the first stage. So Brad was one of the more popular picks, and I thought Brad was going to be a more popular pick because he is almost lights out at Kentucky. You talked about it when talking to your girlfriend about who should I pick. Well, you need to look at Brad.
Yeah, I mean, he'd won going into last night 5 races at that track in the Cup Series, and Brad had won 3 of them. Mm-hmm. One of them, if I'm not mistaken, was a gas mileage deal that he won. But we've said it many times: a win's a win. Doesn't matter how you get there. But the race did get very interesting at the end when they had the caution that came out, which was a quarter of a lap from ending the race, because if Martin would have been a quarter of a lap further ahead instead of just 16 and a half seconds ahead, if he'd have been like 23 seconds ahead, he would have already taken the white flag, which would have ended the race.
And let's back up just a little bit more. After those 2 cautions, we really didn't have much more caution after that. It was pretty clean and green for a majority of the race. And like I was just talking about, the 2 cautions, the first one involved Jimmy Johnson, Brad Keselowski, and I believe Clint Boyer, but I can't remember exactly. And then Trevor Bayne and Casey Kane. Man, Casey Kane just cannot get a break.
Well, and at first I thought it was Junior because Casey was running the Mountain Dew colors last night. And then they're showing Junior still out on the track battling in the top 10. I'm going, man, he was able to continue? That was a heck of a hit.
Yeah. Other cars that had bad days. So, again, Jimmy Johnson, 40th, Brad Keselowski, 39th, Casey Kane, 38th, Trevor Bayne, 37th. All those involved in early stage 2 accidents. Kurt Busch was involved in an accident. I believe he was the one that blew his engine and brought out that last caution.
Correct. 2 laps to go.
And spilled a lot of fluid on the track, and so all the crew chiefs knew it was going to be a long caution as they cleaned it up. So Cole Pearn had plenty of time to think about what he was going to do. Here's the scenario. You've got the fastest car out there. The crazy thing is that cars started making green flag stops about 20 laps to go before 20 laps before this caution, and they left Martin Truex Jr. out there to see what fresh tires would do in traffic. And NBC kept talking about it, that it really didn't turn out to be a huge benefit because it's such a one-groove track right now. And I think that was the major contributing factor to leaving Martin out there. If these guys that came in and got fresh tires would have been putting down 2-second, 3-second faster laps, and that's no exaggeration. What is it, Darlington we go to, that you run almost 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds faster with the fresh set of
Correct.
tires? If that had been the case, I think Martin would have came. But instead, Cole Pearn's thinking, my guy was putting up just as fast a lap times, so I want him out front during that caution, or during that restart, that final restart. If he comes down, 1 or 2, maybe 3 of those guys that are just waiting to see what's going to happen would stay out. I believe the next guy in line to come in would have been Kyle Larson. He was running second at the time. If Martin Truex Jr. would have came, I think Kyle Larson would have stayed. I think he'd have stayed out because he had essentially the second fastest car. He was running close to lap times than Martin Truex Jr. was, but he didn't have a faster car than Martin. If he'd have stayed, I think Chase Elliott would have stayed, and I think another guy would have stayed, just because that had given them the best opportunity to win that race. And then Martin would have been probably best case scenario sitting in 4th or 5th if nothing bad would have happened on pit road. And with a couple of laps to go, and the way the race ended up unfolding with that final lap caution, or that final lap wreck, I think that'd have been it. I don't think Martin Truex Jr. would have got the win. I don't think he could have gotten through traffic in time. Again, if it had been a wider groove track, it's a whole different scenario. But I think just because it was so isolated, that it was best to just keep him out there.
Well, what I question it on is they put oil dry all over, so you didn't know where he was going to get into that, and that stuff would have stuck to the tires, being hot tires. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was an issue. And even with fresh tires, he'd got beat on a restart once. So the restart was the key to the whole thing.
And man, what a good restart he had.
I don't remember who it was that lined up behind him.
It would have been I say it wouldn't have been it. I don't remember who came out of the pits behind him, or would have been, but Kyle Larson started outside of him.
Well, he got a huge push on the restart by whoever was right behind him.
I think he said in the post-race interview, he said thanks to Logano for the big push.
Okay. Well,
who ended up finishing 8th because he had to lift to get in the corner and ended up losing a bunch of spots. But
I think he thought his fastest way was to try and push him and clear and be able to drop down maybe. But obviously the push part helped, really got Truex done. I mean, Truex in the post-race interview even said that he thought he was toast,
Yeah. He thought for sure when Cole left him. I think Cole was the only guy, unless Cole was lying, I think he was the only guy that was confident about that call. Because Martin Truex Jr. thought he was done. Jeff Burton on the post-race after doing the cookies said, I thought he was cooked. I thought he was absolutely done.
I did too.
And a lot of people did. But even before the caution came out for that final wreck, when they crossed the overtime line and the white flag was that was the last lap, then I think a couple of cars spun in the infield, including Matt Kenseth. But they threw the caution then, and it finalized the race. That was it. I don't think anybody was catching him.
But they waited a long time before they threw that last caution.
Yeah, I think they wanted to wait and see what happened, because I think if those cars would have been able to get going again, a lot like you see at a dirt track, when a car spins in 3, the field's coming out of 4, they'll wait until they're halfway along the backstretch to throw the caution because they want to see if that car can get going and pull away. And I think NASCAR is doing that. I heard an interesting comment on the broadcast last night that did you catch the water bottle hitting Ty Dillon's car? I happened to catch that live and rewind it a couple of times because I didn't think, being so used to Fox having the coverage, I didn't figure anybody would have noticed it, but NBC actually went back and addressed it, which is, what a broadcast partner should do. And they kept talking about how drivers have been asking NASCAR if it's a debris caution, it better be, make sure if you're going to throw the caution for a debris, that it is something that will hurt these cars or cause a safety issue. Don't throw the caution for a water bottle. Don't throw it for a straw hat. Don't throw it for little things. Make sure if you're going to throw the caution that it is well worth it. And I think that last caution was an example of that too. They had time with the field going through 1 and 2. They had time to look at it and say, can anybody get going? Is this a safety issue? Is anybody hurt in the car? Is everybody okay? Okay, well, now we got to throw it because they're not going again, and this could cause an issue if something else happens. So
yeah, but at that point, Truex had probably a 4-car length lead when he went across the start-finish line and took the white flag.
Nobody was catching him. He had such a great restart, and that was the key. Cole said it on the post on the interview before that final restart. 1 and 2 is the key. If we can get clean off of 2, we've got this race locked down. Yeah, and he's absolutely right. So stage 1, Martin Truex Jr. gets the win. Kyle Busch second. Kyle Larson's third. Harvick fourth, and Jamie McMurray fifth. And then Truex won the second stage again with Kyle Busch right behind him. Matt Kenseth third, Harvick fourth, and Eric Jones fifth. Winning on the day, Martin Truex Jr. gets the win. Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, top 5. Eric Jones, Jamie McMurray, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, and Ryan Blaney, top 10. Biggest points on the day, it's going to be Martin Truex Jr.'s second time. He's the sweep, and he is the only driver that has done that in the stage racing. We got to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We're going to sit down with Ben Rhodes and talk to him about his career and time in the Camp and World Truck Series. This week's young gun is 17-year-old John Kinzer out of Corning, Iowa. John is following in the footsteps of his grandfather, Larry Fudge, who drove a coupe back in the day, and his uncle, Tony Hardesty, who currently competes in the stock car class. John first started competing 2 years ago in a sport compact at Adams County Speedway, where he finished 4th in the points and won the Most Improved Driver of the Year award. Going into his second season of dirt racing, John has moved into the stock car class. He has his eyes set on picking up a couple of feature wins and finishing in the top 5 for the points at Adams County Speedway. Someday, John hopes to get a dirt late model and compete in the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series, but for now, he's excited to learn the stock car ropes. When John isn't at the racetrack or working in the shop, he loves to drop a lure in the water or find a blind to do a little hunting. Make sure you keep your eye out for the number 6 K's Cafe, Joe's Lounge, Houck Farms, Mid-State Machine stock car at a dirt track near you. This week's Young Gun has been presented by I-80 Speedway, home of the Silver Dollar Nationals.
Race fans, are you ready? The 7th annual Silver Dollar Nationals returns to the I-80 Speedway with sprint cars, late models, modifieds, and all the adrenaline you can handle. Action starts on Thursday, July 20th with the Malvern Bank Super Late Models and the Nebraska 360 Sprint Cars. Then on the 21st and 22nd, the US MTS Modified and the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series battles for the right to stand in victory lane. Tickets on sale now at i80speedway.com. The Silver Dollar Nationals, July 20th, 21st, and 22nd at I-80 Speedway. Be there.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100 plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the front stretch.
402-573-0590 is the number to call if you want to join us live on the front stretch. Give us your thoughts on the race last night at Kentucky, or you can give us your thoughts on the stage racing. Some of the news that's come out this week, we're going to try to address that in turn number 4. Plenty to talk about if you want to join us. Again, 402-573-0590. Joining us on the phone now, Ben Rhodes, driver for the Camp and World Truck Series. Ben, thanks so much for joining us, bud.
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. It's going to be an interesting season so far. We're still out of the chase, but we're in there with points right now. We just need to get our first win.
The chase system, the playoff system, is new to the NASCAR Camp and World Truck Series in the Xfinity Series, and the Cup guys learned really quickly that it really flips the script, that you guys can really kind of put all your chips on one race and keep your fingers crossed that will help you cash in for the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at places like Daytona or Talladega, anybody can win there, and it's been proof. You know, some wrecked race cars win the race at Daytona or Talladega, and they get into the playoffs. And it may not even be somebody that necessarily could win a race for the rest of the season, but they'll do better than somebody that maybe had bad luck or had bad things happen, but had good performances. So we're kind of in that same boat. We've had really good performances all year long, and we're just not in the playoffs yet. And we've been running really well. There's probably about 3 races I could name that we coulda, shoulda, woulda won, but we're not there yet. So, you know, putting all your chips on one table is good, but it hasn't been playing off yet for us. So we've been just trying to get our points up there, and we're 5th in points right now. So we're just trying to stay consistent and make sure if we don't win a race, which I think we will, we'll be okay.
You mentioned earlier about your trying to get that first win on the year. We saw a win disappear for you at Kansas Speedway 6 weeks ago or so. How long did that take to get over? You had that in your back pocket.
Yeah, we definitely had that one wrapped up, and the real shame of it is that once we had our motor blow from running over a bolt on the racetrack, it instantly destroyed the motor. Once that happened, we pulled into the pits, and obviously there was no saving anything, 7 laps to go, and it went green the rest of the way. So that kind of made it even worse. We wouldn't even have had to fight, really. We had a big lead over Kyle Busch. So we pretty much had it locked up. It's just a shame that it happened. You know, I think our crew members, it's still on their minds. I know it's still on my mind, but, you know, we can't really focus on it, let it get to us, because we have so many more opportunities ahead of us to do that same thing. It's easy to dwell on the past and say what could have been. The real hard part is to focus forward, and that's what we're doing, you know, because that's the only thing you can do. If we want to have that happen again, have that awesome feeling, but finish it up correctly, then we've got to focus forward. We got to take our setups, improve them, and work on these Tundras and just get them faster and faster every week.
Is losing a win like that, the way you lost, I mean, that was nothing you could do about it. That was
total
sheer
fluke.
Circumstance. Does that make it easier to move on from than something like you making a mistake or the pit crew making a mistake?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If I made the mistake, let's say we were running horrible all race and that happened, then the whole weekend would have just been horrible. If I was making a run for my first win and I made some mistake, hit the wall, knocked it down, I mean, then I would have felt absolutely horrible. You know, if there's mistakes, bad performances, then that's one thing. But for us to be performing as good as we did on our A game, and then something completely out of our control take us out of the race, while it really sucks, and you know, we wanted to win, and it stings, and it'll sting for weeks and weeks and weeks, I think it's easier to deal with and get past and focus forward when you know that it wasn't you, and when you know that you've done everything that you can. It gives you confidence knowing that that race was ours, and the only reason that it wasn't is because something we couldn't even control, just an absolute fluke. If it was me making a mistake or a crew chief making a mistake, somebody on the crew, you know, not assembling something correctly, pit stops, then you have that in your mind, and it takes confidence away from the team. So it gave us confidence. It just stings, and it's always in the back of your mind when you go into the next race.
Well, you guys have been recovering well, mostly been in the top 10 for finishes for your last several races, and finishing, not just finishing in the top 10, but also finishing stages in the top 10. So you guys are racking up those bonus points, essentially, that you're able to use to qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think those bonus points are more valuable than what people realize in the beginning of the year, at least for me. And the funny thing is those top 10s are typically our worst performances. Like, if you look at our stats, we have finishes that are outside the top 10, and those finishes are usually performances that were better for us, but something happened. And so the top 10 finishes really aren't our best performances. Something always seems to happen that takes us out. So, you know, an example of that would be our worst performance up to that point was Charlotte, and we finished 8th. So our worst performance has been in the top 10s. Our best performances don't have a result because something out of our control happens.
Yeah.
So if we just get a little good luck on our side, we'll rack up those stage points, rack up the stage wins, and I'm hoping those points will really benefit us in the playoffs and just get us to the next round without a whole lot of effort.
So for our listeners, just to clarify what Ben's saying is he's talking about the Kansas race. They had a great performance, just didn't get the finish they deserved, and they've had races where they didn't perform and got a finish better than they deserved.
Absolutely. The same with Daytona. We were leading, coming off of turn 2, last lap. On the high side, had a big run. We were pulling into the lead, and we ended up getting wrecked. Another one would be Dover. We were leading the good part of the race, then come in for green flag pit stop, come back out, caution comes out, and all of a sudden we're lapped down. We have to start at the back of the field and work our way back up front. There's been several races where our really good performances aren't really shown or highlighted by the results.
Ben, you've come from the kart division. You've raced on dirt and asphalt, bandoleros. You've raced in the Xfinity Series. Is there a certain style of track that seems to fit your driving style?
I wouldn't say that there's a certain type of track. I like all the tracks that are on the schedule. Because if you go in with a bad attitude, then it's not really going to be a good weekend for you. But I really like the tracks that have wide racing grooves where on restarts you can go where you want to and you have grip and you can really make some aggressive passes and make things happen. For example, Iowa Speedway, the top wasn't cleared off or dusted off yet, and the top can come in at Iowa. It just takes a while. So I do like that track. But on one of the restarts, I'm on the high side 3 wide. We had to start back there because of, again, a tire failure. We were running fourth. We had a tire failure. Come in, pit. We're 2 laps down. I pass the leaders back. We get a lap down. We get the lucky dog. Restart the tail end of the field. We're working our way up through the field. And I'm on the high side just taking my time, passing people, just the rest of the race. And somebody doors us on the straight race. And that's where I could have ran a tire, maybe all the way up by the wall, and we could have started passing people. Because it wasn't all the way out, I wasn't able to go to the tracks that I like. The Kansas Speedways, Atlanta, you can go all the way up by the wall and pretty much pull like Kyle Larson and zoom past people.
Speaking of Kyle Larson, and one race that we always circle on our schedule is coming up in a couple of weeks, the Eldora race, the Mud Summer Classic. Is that something that you look forward to, or is that one of those races some drivers look at it and say, can't wait to get there. Other ones look at it and say, I just got to survive.
Can't wait to get it over.
No, I can't wait to get there. Last year, I was really, really nervous and anxious about the whole thing. But I ended up winning my heat race, and we ended up running like second and third for a good part of the race. And trying to battle for the win.
Front row.
A lowered radiator in the truck, so when we hopped the berm, we didn't have a raised radiator like the rest of the teams, and when we hopped the berm, it just ate everything up underneath the truck and knocked the radiator out of it. So we learned from that. We've got a raised radiator this year. We've made sure everything's clearance, and I've learned a lot since then. Obviously, I had no idea how to run on the cushion, how to do anything. I was just trying not to wreck the whole time, and somehow I can. So I feel like now I can drive more than just off the seat of my pants. I can drive with experience. I can drive with understanding of how the racetrack's going to change, and I drive with knowing how to ride the cushion. And I wouldn't say that I'm good at it. There's these guys that can ride a cushion like none other because they've done it their whole life. This is brand new to me, so I'm pumped up for the opportunity.
Hey, believe me, we're out here in dirt race country, and we see these guys run all the time. We went over to Knoxville and watched Kyle Larson run real good over there last year. But these guys that do this for a living, I mean, your top guys, they will jump that cushion from time to time. It's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was told about that. And the cushion there, the funny thing is during the race when the track had grip, the beginning of the race when it still had some moisture in it, you could run the top side, and there was actually a little bit of a berm built up. I wouldn't say berm, but probably I'd say a cushion. And you would run on it, and while it was bigger, it was easier to hit for me. I was able to hit it, and we had a lot of speed. We were actually running down the leader check. Kyle Larson, we passed him, and he couldn't get back past us. But as the track started losing moisture and really slicking off, they lost the cushion, and those guys that could run on something that small had experience doing it. They were really good at it. And that's where I needed the experience to be able to run up front with them. So I feel like now that I have that, now that I've been there watching, I have a better understanding. I know where the track's going to do. I just don't think dirt's made for corn anymore. I actually like racing on dirt. I'm gonna enjoy it, and I think we're gonna do really well.
If you could be the god of racing for a day, whether it was to help a promoter, help drivers, help the fans, what is the one thing you'd change about racing today?
Oh man, do you have an hour? If you have an hour, I can tell you.
No, only one thing. I didn't say all the things, just one.
Only one thing. Oh man, that's so hard. There's a combination. I think it takes a combination of things. If I change one, everything is so dialed in right now for how racing is. If you change one, I think it would make racing and everything suffer. So I don't know. I would like to see the maybe tire construction change a little bit from radials to maybe bias splice on certain tracks, giving us an advantage. I wouldn't say an advantage, but giving us maybe a little bit of an opportunity to hustle the cars on short tracks. Another thing might be the aerodynamics, making it where we're not so aero dependent is the big thing. That'd be my change. Making it where we're not so aero dependent, taking the splitter off completely, raising the cars up. That would be probably my biggest change.
I don't think I've heard a single driver ever say they like that splitter. They want to keep it. It seems to be a common theme in the garages amongst all three major touring series. Get rid of that damn splitter.
Yeah, Carl Edwards' thing was literally take all the aero off and let us go race these things. And it was kind of funny that you started with tires, because last year we talked to your teammate Matt Crafton, and he said, make all the tires start like they've got 20 laps on them. He goes, put it right in the driver's hands right when they change the tires.
Yes, exactly, yeah. The big thing is just making it where not so much that we don't have grip, because aerodynamics play such a factor. I really feel like if we could take the splitter off, then we could have beautiful grass at the racetracks. If we take the splitter off, we won't become a high speed shovel, just destroy everything. So if we could do that, I feel like that'd be a huge positive for us. But that's from somebody that only has 2 years of experience in the truck series. So I don't think any one person has the answer, but I think it would become a huge team effort to change things. Obviously, the racing is great right now, but that would be something that I think might be able to improve it and make it where drivers could race harder than ever before.
Well, when you've got all the drivers saying the same thing, as Dan alluded, I'm almost inclined to say, well, that must be right. If one guy says it, you don't think a whole lot of it. But, when everybody you talk to says the same thing, there's got to be something to it.
Well, the strategy on the racetrack right now is so aero dependent. If you can go into a corner, and if you miss it by just a little bit, don't get enough air on the nose, you lose so much time. And so it's frustrating as a driver, but also I think that if the cars weren't so aero dependent, you might be able to see a little bit closer racing. Now, obviously, the other side, that's one extreme. The other extreme to that is truck racing. We have so much drag, and we are so aero dependent that we go to some of these high speed racetracks, and we do put on some of the best racing because we simply can't get away from each other. You go to Michigan, and it's almost like pack racing there because you're so close the entire time. You can't get away from each other because of drafting. So you have one extreme that's good, and then another extreme that's good. And maybe we could tailor some of our packages for different tracks, tailor the rules packages. So that's just a couple thoughts. But if I was the guy for racing, there's a lot of stuff. That's just me. That's just me for one, I guess.
Sounds educated, though. Very much educated.
Ben, we do appreciate your time. Again, like I was saying, best of luck for the rest of the season. Looks like you're well on your way to qualifying for the playoffs. I'm going to knock on wood to make sure I don't jinx you. I will also throw some salt over my left shoulder. I will avoid all black cats and ladders because I don't want to be a curse. I want to be a good luck charm for you, which usually, we've had a pretty good streak. Whenever we interview a driver for the first time, they go out and knock down a good top 3 finish, if not a win. So hopefully we'll see you in victory lane at Eldora now.
Well, I appreciate it, guys, and thank you for having me on. And you can't really jinx us because we've been jinxed this year. So hopefully what you said will undo the jinx.
There you go.
Next time we're at the track, we're going to try and find you and track you down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Have a good one. So, again, that was Ben Rhodes, driver of the number 27 Thor Sports Toyota Tundra they run in the Camp World Truck Series, sponsored by Safelite. You get an opportunity to keep it out for that 27. Dirk, I don't think we brought him any luck. We interviewed him about a week and a half ago in the race after we interviewed him, which was Friday night's Kentucky race, involved in an accident and finished 27th.
Yeah, the Thursday night race this week, the truck 27 finished 27th, but when they interviewed him after the little melee that he started, he owned up to it. He said, I made a mistake and sorry,
Next race for the Cape and Roll Truck Series is the one that everyone's excited about. It's at Eldora for the Aspen Dental 150. It is being broadcast on the Fox Business Network. If you don't know if you have it, or if you don't have it, or if you don't want to track it down, come on down to Quaker Steak and Lube Wednesday night. Coverage starts at about 5 o'clock, so it'll be about 4 o'clock our time. The race is set to start. I think the actual feature event is set to start at about 8 o'clock our time. So come on down to Quaker Steak and Lube, grab yourself some wings, some burgers, some beers. That night, $4 aluminum bottles of beer, $3 Busch Lights out in the beer gardens. You can also go $7.99 Lube Burgers. We'll have the race on with the audio in the Brickyard. So make sure you join us that night. Also, it's bike night, so it's going to be a good night for live music. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. Stan Cisar's going to join us in just a few minutes to talk about results from I-80 Speedway and Eagle Raceway. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
402-573-0590. Again, you can give us a call and your thoughts on Friday night weekly racing action at I-80 Speedway or Saturday night NASCAR or IMCA weekly racing action at Eagle Raceway. You can also talk about the Saturday night Kentucky race. Stan Cisar joining us on the phone now, the voice of the Speedway. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Dan. How about you?
Oh, loving it, man. You've had a long couple of days. I'm secretly a little happy that I didn't have to work last night at Eagle Raceway because I needed some sleep. Whew, I was exhausted after Friday night.
Plus, you needed to catch the race on the tube so you could talk about that in turn 1.
Absolutely. Stan,
well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you go ahead and talk about the races, and I can give you just a few comments on a couple of those wins, and maybe add a little information that I have to add.
Yeah, kicking it off for the night, the River City Heating and Cooling Sport Compacts. This was a class that, right off the bat, it started off with a little bit of drama. The series points leader, Dan Markham, I ended up finding out from race officials after the race was over with. Dan was parked for the night after being warned about rough driving and then continuing to be too much of a rough driver. And Joe Kosiski talked to me and said, we're really going to start working on cracking down these Sport Compact guys because the other drivers have been coming to us and saying that there's just too much beating and banging and moving people out of the way, and it's not enough clean racing. So Dan was the first driver that's going to get penalized with that. He got put on the trailer before the feature was able to roll out, so he ends up getting a 0 for the day. But still, that point lead is there for him. He's still got a 10-point lead.
But that's going to send a message throughout the whole pit area on some of this rough driving because there were some pretty bad accidents Friday night. A couple of them I really don't think were intentional. Couple of them I think really could have been avoided with a little bit more give and take, with these guys. We're not racing. This isn't the Daytona 500. We're not racing for thousands of dollars on this deal, with the exception of the super late model division. Everybody's out there to have fun. And, tearing up race cars is not a great thing. And boy, talking about the Sport Compact class, our buddy Jim Cahill, man, he took a wild ride down the backstretch. It was really good to be able to see him get out of that D1 machine probably 5-6 times. And especially in the sports compact division on a huge track like I-80 is, with those small cars, short wheelbase cars on the big track like that, they get sideways a little bit and they get get a little bit out of shape, and once they start barrel rolling, they roll for a while before they stop.
Yeah, it was pretty scary, but Jim was able, like you said, Jim was able to crawl out pretty quickly, and he put on Facebook that most of last Friday night and all of Saturday, he felt fine, so he didn't have any repercussions from that. So good for that. Hopefully
he's
he can
a tough
get that,
old guy, boy.
yeah, hopefully he can get that D1 back out. Your results for the A feature for the River City Heating and Cooling Sport Compacts. Denny Berghan Jr., what are we going to do to slow this guy down? We've claimed his car. We've started him from the back. He's taken weeks off, and nobody can slow this guy down.
Well, it's kind of a neat deal. Denny's been around racing his whole life. Of course, his dad raced. It's in the blood. It's in the family. And he's a guy, they never did really race on a big budget. He found a niche in the sport compact class. He's a very talented builder. He knows the cars. His brother-in-law, Joe Baker, knows the cars. Those guys came up with something, and they've got a very dominating car right now. That being said, I think, something has to be done, to keep things on a level playing field. But those guys just did their homework, and to lose the entire car that you have to put a whole lot of work in, it had to be a sweet win for him, because he drug a year and a half, 2-year-old car out of the barn, which was far from his best piece, and he drove around his old car and still took the A feature win. Had to be a pretty satisfying victory for him. Something very similar happened down at Eagle last night. There was a claim, and in this case, the claimers refused. And sometime we'll do it when we have a little more time. We'll talk a little bit more about the claim and some of its purpose and that. But let's go on. Great win for Danny Berghan Jr.
Kyle Owens coming home second, Scott Brown third, Brad Schreiner fourth, and Andrew Kuva rounds out your top 5 for the River City Heating and Cooling Sport Compacts. No hobby stocks in action on Friday night. They had the night off, so we move on to the Rotell's Italian Bakery stock cars. What a great battle between Dan Jackson, Eric Rempel, Shane Stutzman, Scott Carlson, Nick Steyer. Nick Woodard was in there for a little while. Man, we just had some great action between these guys. Oh, and don't even forget Larry Robinson Jr. He was mixing it up for a while during that feature.
Well, actually, it's Larry the third, little Larry.
Oh, yeah.
This guy's really kind of coming into his own, and week in, week out, those guys probably put on the best side-by-side racing out of all the divisions at I-80 Speedway. And it was good to see Nick Starr finally get the win. He's been around this thing since the Pro-Am days out at Sunset Speedway, and always hanging around in there. Great guy, tough competitor, and good to see him finally get the win.
And, yeah, like you mentioned, he had the strongest car, and I think the fastest car won that night. But that didn't stop Scott Carlson, Shane Stutzman, and Eric Rempel from peeking their nose in there and trying to pick up a win on the night. But nothing doing for those guys. The racing MD got the job done.
Yes, sir.
For the Ties Outdoor Power and Service B Modifieds, a great battle to start off with. We saw Mark Lighting get the win, Austin Svoboda second, Gunnar Pike third, Matt Andrews fourth, and Devin Peterson fifth. But a great battle early on for most of the race until Sean Harker lost his engine.
Yep, I talked to Sean last night, and we'll touch very briefly on that at Eagle Raceway. But one of his main comments was that the oil pan on his engine failed last night. It failed to keep the parts inside the oil pan when that engine let go. That was a huge fireball going down the front stretch, and but as you'll find out a little bit later, Sean bounced back on Saturday night.
Your custom diesel drivers training A-mods comes out like this. Boy, Dylan Smith just stunk up the class. Absolutely fast car, but until he got to the front, started ninth, took his time getting up to the front. It was a great battle between Jesse Dennis, Travis Hatcher, and Ryan Jenkins trying to go 2 for 2 on races. And Justin Wolf ends up coming home in the top 5 finish.
Yeah, good run for the Wolfman. He doesn't compete at I-80 very often, and he started dead last in that thing, drove his way all the way up to 5th. You got to give a call to Justin Zeidner. Zeidner, arguably the fastest guy in the house on Friday night. He was involved in an incident with Jared Heffelman, and Heffelman went around, and Justin got put all the way to the back of the field. He had already charged his way from dead last back up into the top 6 with quite a few laps left to go. And then finally a suspension part broke on that deal. But you were talking about rough driving. That deal, maybe a little more of a racing deal. I don't think it was a takeout. Didn't help Gerald Heffelman any, but it certainly ended what could have been a great run for Justin Zeidner.
And a great battle with. I was really trying hard. Ryan Jenkins led for a lot of that race, and as us announcers, and track officials, we're supposed to be non-biased, but
Of course we are.
It's so hard to not root for some of these guys, and I really like Ryan. He's one of the young talents in this sport. I liken him a lot to Kyle Larson, where he's young, he's got a lot of potential in front of him, and he was leading for most of that race. We had about 6 restarts. Where none of the restarts ended up counting because there was wrecks or it was called back, where Ryan just kept letting Dylan in on that inside groove, and Dylan was able to find some grip on the low side of 1 and 2 and pull away out of turn 2. And after a couple of times doing it, I kind of sat in the booth and kept screaming, "Quick, give it him the low side."
You were screaming all night long. I think your voice went up about 3 octaves during one of those races when you were calling some action down in 1-2. I was being very entertained actually up in the booth whenever you were doing part of the play-by-play.
Well, I'm glad somebody was entertained. All right, moving on to the Kaziski Auto Parts Bragging Right Grand National Dirt Late Models. Bob Ryan gets the win.
Surprise!
Yeah,
we had a different winner.
And you actually were surprised. Jake Bridge finished second, Jacob Brown third, who started sixth. He won his heat race, was inverted back to the 6th position, and not able to make his way up to the front. Although we were watching the race monitor and the scoring and timing, he did have the fastest car most of that race.
When he decided to go, he went. Yeah. There were about I think maybe 4 laps to go in that one. He was almost a straightaway behind the leaders. And at the checkered flag, you could have threw a blanket. It was probably a couple car lengths between first and then another couple between second and third, and so he was there. He was coming. He might have waited just a little bit too long or had the car come in just a little bit too late. But, boy, what can you say about him? He's got that thing wired in that division. And even though he didn't pick up the win, it was great to see Bobby Ryan get the win, because he's been around this thing for quite a number of years. Really kind of an underfunded team. He's running a lot older equipment than most of the rest of the guys out there. But a good victory for Bobby Ryan. Glad to see him get that win.
And a great battle between him and Jake Bridge. Jake didn't give him any opportunity to walk away with that race. Jake was coming fast, and they battled hard and clean for a couple of laps. Jake tried a last corner slide job, but it just didn't work. Ryan was able to get the run off the corner and ends up picking up the win.
Yeah, that's right. Let's slip into the super late model division, talk about the Good Old Time Racing Association a little bit, and we got to give you guys just a little bit of time in turn 4.
Absolutely. Ben Schaller ends up getting the win for the Dirt Super Late Models, and the Cubby's Convenience Store Super Late Models. I think third, was that the 4th win on the season for Ben Schaller? It's either the 3rd or 4th. I thought it was the 4th. Tad Pospischal. Yeah,
Schaller's really tough right now. Probably one of the toughest guys in that class.
Absolutely. And he came from a ways back, started 9th, ends up making his way up to get the win. Tad Pospischal, though, is going to have to get the hard charger for the day. Started 14th, comes home runner-up. Matt Bowler 3rd, Josh Krug 4th. Good run for Josh. He looked strong early, but I think those tires kind of gave up on him late in the race. And Bill Layton Jr. rounds out with your top 5.
He changed lines. They're midway in that race. He was really fast on the bottom. He moved to the top. I think that was his undoing.
And then the Good Old Time Racing Association, Friday night at I-80 Speedway. It was the Bill Rick Memorial Race featuring the Good Old Time Racing Association. And it's really cool to watch those guys race.
I'll tell you what, they had a great field of cars. They had 3 heats, plus the Midwest Outlaw Vintage Racers were up from down in the Kansas area. It treated the fans for a little nostalgia, kind of a throwback of what racing used to be back in the 50s and 60s, and a very popular win for Luke J. Cochran. He was a friend of Bill Rick's and picked up that win. He was really shooting for that deal. They raced quite a bit with the Good Old Time group, and after the race, Luke presented the winner's trophy to Bill Rick's widow Joyce, and it was a very emotional victory lane down there after the race.
Saturday night, you were in action at Eagle Raceway. A beautiful night for you guys for a little dirt track action. Talk about some of the things that happened.
I'm going to slip through this really quick because I know we're running short on time. Sport Compact Division, it was another Cronin family reunion. Larry Cronin picked up the win. He did refuse a claim in the claim area, and actually his son-in-law, Cole Creco, who was the twice defending champion and the current points leader, he was involved in a pretty hard crash in the heat race, and they actually went home, got a backup car, brought it back, started dead last in the B. He drove his way through the B, started last in the A, drove his way back up to second in the A, and he ended up coming home with a victory after Larry refused to claim. Sport Modified Division, we talked about that a little bit. Sean Harker came back with a new crate and picked up the win. Got to give a call to Ari Scouten with a fine third place finish in that deal. You know, he was celebrating a birthday. We had a little fun with him on Friday night. In the hobby stock class, a guy that's kind of been, you know, pretty much dominated over the years, but it's been probably 6 weeks since we've seen him on the front stretch. Roy Armstrong out of Beatrice picked up a win, and it was a tough win. We thought Kenny Roberts was going to get his first ever A-feature win. He made one little slip in traffic, and Roy took the measure of him. A-modified division brought to you by Kaplan University, of course. The guy that was up on his roof a couple weeks ago, Chad Anderson out of Omaha, Nebraska. A very hard-fought race with Bob Zobek. Johnny Sadoff had a really good race going, come from deep in the field after coming out of the B main. But Anderson picked off the win in that deal. And then in the sprint car class, a guy that's picked up his first win since back in, I think, 2005, back when they ran the 305 class out at I-80 Speedway. Dan Satriano finally parked it in Victory Lane, and that was a very, very popular win. Dan's a great guy, and he's been at this. They're another kind of a low-budget team, kind of what the Race Saver deal's all about, and he had his hands full. Mike Boston was right there early on, and we talked about Dan used to help Mike as a pit crew member for quite a number of years, and to be able to pick up the win, having Mike in contention there, you know, it was very satisfying, a very popular win, and Facebook was lighting up today with all the comments on Dan's win. One pretty hard crash, Joey Danley flipped down between turns 3 and 4. Joey did come out of the car okay, but that 14 was pretty heavily damaged. But it was a great night of racing at Eagle Raceway. You know, big deal coming up next week. You know, they're going to have autograph night down there, and I got to give a call after a little adversity on Friday night up in Jackson, one that probably should have been his. Cody Ledger, my guy that drives the 305 for me in the Race Saver division, picked up the win up over there at the 360 race up at Park Jefferson on Saturday night. Tony Stewart made an appearance over in Knoxville, so the buzz is he might be showing up around national time. So so it's going to be great. Things rolling right along, and just another good weekend at the tracks, man.
We'll do it again next weekend. Appreciate your time, Stan. Have a good one.
You too, man.
All right, Friday night, I-80 Speedway. You can catch Stan and Tom Grosso with the call Saturday night at Eagle Raceway. I'll be in the booth with Chris Krug on Friday night at I-80. I tell you what, we've only got a couple of minutes left. There's no reason to break for turn 4 and take that time. So we're just going to cancel turn 4, and we'll just roll right through it. Last couple of announcements. We got a couple of minutes left in the show, and we'll do Quaker Steak and Lube sponsoring the show, the official watering hole of the front stretch. No race today. Obviously, we race on Saturday night, but make sure you get out this coming Wednesday or next Wednesday night for the Aspen Dental 150 at Eldora. Chris and everybody at Quaker Steak and Lube will have the race on the big screens at Quaker Steak and Lube in the Brickyard during bike night. Also, this coming Wednesday night is a special night for bike night. Crash Davis, who was diagnosed with rectal cancer at the end of 2016, has been battling it. It's going well for him, but he's got some medical bills that are piling up. So Chris and everybody at Quaker Steak and Lube are doing a little benefit for him. Every beer sold in the outdoor beer garden on Wednesday night during bike night, Quaker Steak and Lube will donate $1 to the Crash Davis fund, and we'll help Crash pay for those mounting medical bills. Boy, it costs a lot of money to fight this stuff off.
Well, and that's I know somebody's had a recent post that was on Facebook that said heroin addicts get free methadone to break their habit, but they won't give free chemo.
It's too profitable to cure cancer, so they just treat it and make a bunch of money. Iowa Speedway, they are in action today. The Iowa Corn 300 kicks off at 4:30. I can't say it enough, and we're not shilling it because they're a sponsor of the show. This is one of my favorite races of the show. I absolutely love going over to Iowa Speedway. It's breaking my heart that I'm not going to make it over there today. I got too much stuff to do around the house and too many things to do, but I'm going to be watching it on NBC tonight. If I can't put a butt in the seat, I'm at least going to put an eye on the ratings and watch that race. You're going to love it. If you get over there, it's cheap to get into the racetrack. It's a great time. Head over there right now. It's an all-day experience to go over and enjoy the Iowa Corn 300. We'll do it again live next weekend as we're going to be working on getting a couple of interviews. I don't want to say who we've got lined up for the interview because if it happens, it's going to be big, but if it doesn't, it'll be a little, it'll turn into a lot of people that won't get to hear an interview that we're working on. But nonetheless, next Sunday we're going to be recorded again, and we will make sure to do our best to get you one heck of an interview. They're going to be here to preview the Silver Dollar Nationals, and I hope they can make it to that race July 20th, 21st, and 22nd at I-80 Speedway.
So it's kind of a big deal like us running Pocono today with no turn 4?
Yeah. Yeah, we're running Pocono today. We'll be back next weekend to do it all again. Thanks to Joe's Karting. Thanks to I-80 Speedway and Sarah Kelly and Soya and Sura and Quaker Steak and Lube for sponsoring the front stretch. We'll do it again next weekend here on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Race fans, are you ready? The 7th annual Silver Dollar Nationals returns to the I-80 Speedway with sprint cars, late models, modifieds, and all the adrenaline you can handle. Action starts on Thursday, July 20th with the Melbourne Bank Super Late Models and the Nebraska 360 Sprint Cars. Then on the 21st and 22nd, the U.S. MTS Modified and the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series battles for the right to stand in victory lane. Tickets on sale now at i80speedway.com. The Silver Dollar Nationals, July 20th, 21st, and 22nd at I-80 Speedway. Be there.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100 plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
The official watering hole of the front stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.